All right, welcome back, y'all, for part 2 of how to find a good therapist, specifically looking for a therapist that's the right fit for where you're at. I know I went off on a tangent about dating last time and how that relates, and it is all related, and insecure attachment styles and how that relates to finding a good therapist, especially since I've had requests to talk about that. Okay, let's jump right back into it from last time because it's a continuation of the previous episode about what finding a good therapist really looks like and how to narrow down that good fit search. So I kind of ended on the doing your best. And I know I mentioned that in many episodes. And I think there's like one maybe episode where I've elaborated on the doing your best story and what that looked like. That was Dr. Brene Brown, her first few weeks, I want to say, in therapy, first few sessions where she did find a good fit therapist. And she went in and her therapist was like, yeah, but isn't everybody doing their best? And she's like, fuck, no, people aren't doing their best. And if you Google this and you can come up with a search, and Brene Brown has the interview with Russell Brand or the podcast, whatever, with Russell Brand, and she talks about the doing your best story. But she leaves a few points out from some of her other content, like where she talked to her husband and asked, do you think people are doing their best? And he took a long time to answer, like predominantly in life, are people doing their best? And he was like, I don't know, but I know my life is better when I assume people are. And I know I've mentioned in previous episodes, like think about how often you're doing your best in life, how often we're doing the best that we can with the tools that we have, with the information that we have, with the energy that we have, my fellow ADDers, my neurodivergents, the neurospices of us, and just those with like even neurotypical, with life, with stresses, with grief. We're low level grieving like 7 to 10 things every single day. And that's if you don't have something big to be grieving. Life is stressful, life is painful, life is difficult as an adult. And the further you get into it, the more you realize that. And like just surviving day to day, even neurotypical brains, we have plenty to work on. Plenty to be doing our best for. And sometimes we just don't have the energy. It all depends. It depends on where you're at in life and what's going on. And we all have shit going on. So I want to finish talking about the dating segment really quick, and then we'll get right back into the meat and potatoes, the main topic of what it looks like to find that good fit therapist and how to recognize the right fit for where you're at. The doing your best story. Just try to know your own limits. Just try to not project something that you are not. Try to reconcile those parts of the brain of what you want and what you're actually capable of. And think about something that you want. Something, I want a relationship, Missy. I want a serious committed relationship. Okay. Tell me about the part of the brain that has you following through with that. Tell me, are you showing up? Are you making plans? Are you following through? Are you responsive to the person that you're dating? Or are you being responsive to the people that you're talking to about dating? Are you making an effort? Yeah. What does that actually look like? What do your actions say versus your words? I appreciate the words, but they're fucking meaningless without the action behind it. Do words and actions align? And again, not your fault, right? Because these are two different parts of the brain. It is your fault, not your fault. You know what I mean? Psychologically speaking. So reconcile that within yourself and say, oh shit, I'm not ready for this. I'm not emotionally available right now. There's too much happening. This is going on and this and this and this and this and this and this and I can't handle this. Okay, great. Then don't be dating. Don't be out there. Don't be on the apps. Don't be whatever. Because it's not fair to you or the people that you're trying to date. So I know I circled off on a little ADD topic about dating, but it's all relevant to finding a good therapist. You have to find somebody for where you're at, and it relates to dating as well. Find somebody for where you're at, somebody that can challenge you, but without being harsh and mean. Somebody that is not a yes person. And if you're just in the very beginning stages, you're scratching the surface, maybe someone who can just teach you about emotion regulation and starting to feel your feelings, starting to notice where they're at in your body, which we've talked about in many episodes before this. Just someone who can start with the basics and you can progress and gently challenge you along the way to the point where you're learning behavioral changes. And you're learning that your words and actions must align, because without our word, what do we have? Without our word, what do we have? It's not a rhetorical question. If you want to send me answers to that, that's great. But seriously, what are we without our word? What do I mean by our word? I mean, we say what we mean, we do what we say. Don't say it if you're not going to do it. Integrity is one of my core values, as y'all know from previous episodes. So you know that this is something that is particularly, I don't want to say a trigger. It's particularly a button for me. So take it for what it's worth. Also, take the whole fucking podcast, not just this episode, but every single one with a grain of salt. Not a mental health professional. Me. This is not a replacement for mental health help. Take everything with a grain of salt. Because sometimes I go back and listen to my old episodes that I'll send to friends or get comments on or get requests for or whatever. And I'll be like, oh God, that was wrong. And it's not a lot of it, but new information comes to light, like it does in the scientific community, just like in the psychological community. And I'll be like, oh wow, that's, oh God, that was terrible. Should I delete that? Maybe. I haven't deleted any, but I've looked back and gone, that wasn't the best guidance. So take this with a grain of salt. Take everything with a grain of salt. Take what your therapist says with a grain of salt. But take the time to interview and find yourself a good fit therapist, which is easier said than done, I get. So what does that interviewing process look like? Or we're just going to use interview for the sake of argument here. Let's do a little bit of recap from episode 4 from the How to Find a Good Therapist. It looks like asking specific questions that are tailored to what you are looking for, what kind of self-improvement you have in mind, what you want to get out of therapy, why are you there in the first place? So let's narrow that down and then ask tailored questions based on that. Obviously, everybody's going to be different. Everybody's going to be in different therapeutic states and ready for different things and in different stages of their own path and their healing journey and healing path, whatever. Your adventure, as I mentioned from the last episode. But there are some basic guidelines and general information that I can try to help you with as much as I can. Again, reminder, this is no substitute for mental health help. Please seek mental health help. Talk to a professional about this. Talk to a professional about what to look for in an interview and all of that stuff. Talk to anybody that you can think of that's a licensed mental health professional and or is sufficiently qualified to give you information. This podcast is no substitute for mental health help. So take everything that I say with a grain of salt. Also, take what works and leave what doesn't. Just take what you're like, oh, that resonates with me. But that other thing you said, Missy, no. I'm like, okay, great. Take what works, leave what doesn't. Please. That's the best thing for you individually. Okay, so that being said, let's get back into it. So I'm a big fan of the book, The Body Keeps the Score. I think that any competent trauma therapist, because I'm looking for somebody who can do deeper level work, who can do DBT, who can work with me in inner child healing, who's familiar and or certified or trained in IFS, somatic healing, all of the things, right? I am looking for higher level concepts and people who have spent significant years in therapy and lots of experience with trauma healing, et cetera, who can work with my parts and so on and so forth, and preferably do some imagination work because that works really well for me personally. So I know what I'm looking for, and I'm tailored and specific in my questions. But as someone new to therapy or someone just starting out or someone only a couple years in or someone that's been spinning their wheels or doesn't know if they have the right fit, you don't know what to ask. You don't know what to look for. You don't know necessarily where you're at. So I think that's one of the biggest things is let's try as best we can to take a look in the mirror and say, where am I at in my journey? Am I emotionally available? Do I want to become emotionally available? Am I closed off for intimacy? Am I afraid of vulnerability? Do I want a relationship, but I'm not willing to do anything to get it? Like, just be brutally honest and then share those things with your potential good fit therapist and ask questions based on where you are at specifically. Like, The Body Keeps the Score is not something I recommend for somebody who's not years into their therapeutic journey, right? Not something I recommend. I think everybody should read the IFS book, No Bad Parts, by Dick Schwartz. I've recommended that before in other episodes, and I think it bears repeating. That's something that everybody should just be aware of, but maybe you're not ready to do that actual work. The IFS work is a different level. That's a higher level in therapy as well, I would say. Again, my opinion, take it for what it's worth. But perhaps you're gleaning the information and not ready to do that parts work yet, because that shit's hard. Listen to the episode of Sabrina Zohar with Dick Schwartz. She has him on it. Oh, it's just such a good episode. He's done a lot of guest appearing in other podcasts as well in episodes. But I can't name them all because I haven't listened to them all. But that one is particularly poignant. Great example of what IFS therapy looks like because they do some in the episode. So it's great. So that's a really good example. And I'll try to put a link in the show notes if I get my shit together and remember. Don't hold your breath. But just know where you're at and be clear with what you're looking for and clear with your goals in therapy. What are you there for? Why do you want to be there? Do you want to be there? Is someone dragging you there? Do you feel like the world is pressuring you? Do you feel like someone else is pressuring you? Do you want to fucking be there in the first place? Because if you don't want to be there, if you don't want to do that work, baby, this ain't gonna work. Therapy and doing the work on yourself and a growth mindset, you gotta be ready for it. You have to be ready to be vulnerable and willing to put in the deeper work. And it takes time to get to the higher level work and the deeper shit that makes the bigger impacts in your daily life and all of that. That takes time. But even to be successful at all, you have to want to be there. Little side segue anecdote story time. You guys remember episode 1, 2, and 3? The whole shit with my mom. So part of the condition of her staying here when she became more and more progressively abusive with me, and I mean really nasty, like, you're a piece of shit daughter, blah, 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 blah. Like, you're so unkind to me is what she would say to me on a regular basis. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so awful. Like, the psychological strain of having her in my house was just almost unbearable. It was pretty unbearable. I did the best I could. I have lots of outlets. But anyway, I made it conditional that she go to therapy. This is back in 2020, so give me a little grace. But this is Missy from almost 6 years ago now that did not have her shit together, that didn't understand that therapy is never going to work for somebody who doesn't want to be there. Somebody with an undiagnosed mental illness, with a pervasive personality disorder, undiagnosed BPD, which is pretty serious. It's a pretty serious personality disorder, who has no intention of doing the work, has no growth mindset, has no accountability whatsoever, and does not want to fucking be there. I don't know if I was making it worse, but I wasn't making it better by dragging her to therapy. So I was like, hey, you want to live in my fucking house? You got to go to therapy. That's it. That's it. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then my therapist, eventually got through to me because I was still fairly new in therapy and I hadn't made as much progress as I thought I had. Oh, yeah. She was like, I don't know, this is another thing. Like, dragging your mom, I don't think that's going to make things better. My mom got some emotion regulation skills and some like DBT tactics and some EFT, some tapping. And that actually helped her with distress tolerance. But she had zero intention of digging into anything, zero intention of working on herself, no accountability for her behavior and being abusive to me. She's never acknowledged that she's been abusive to me, even though it's been since I'd known her. But that's just an example of, it wasn't necessarily damaging, but it wasn't helpful. And it's a waste of time and money. Like, don't go if you're not ready. And if you see other people, then they're not ready and you're telling them, you need to go to fucking therapy. Get your shit together and you need to be in therapy. And why aren't you in therapy? And everybody's in therapy. Well, that may be true. And a lot of people are doing their work and a lot of people are going to therapy. And a lot of people are going because they think that's what they should do, not because they want to be there. Not because they see a growth mindset. Not because they want to be a better human being. Not because they want to look in the mirror and say, where did I fuck up? And how can I take accountability? And how can I be better? And why am I dating all these messed up people? Or why am I married to someone that abuses me or whatever? Or why am I just in a sham of a marriage where I'm married to someone I really like, but I'm not in love with? That can, there are different types of, I shouldn't say it's a sham. Like, that can be a choice. Like, if you're not acknowledging it, then it's a sham. But if you're acknowledging it and that's what you sign up for, then that's a relationship choice, not a sham. So I shouldn't disparage that. There are different types of relationships and marriages and different types of interpersonal dynamics that function differently for different people. So yeah, that all is to say, know yourself, know where you're at, know your limits, and know first and foremost, do I want to do this? Do I want to work on me? Do I want to look in the mirror and say, the fuck can I fix here? Where can I do better? And why am I making my own reality unhappy? Because I can almost guarantee you, it's you, baby. If you're unhappy, look in the mirror. Obviously, if you're grieving or there's other circumstances, take that into account. But if you are predominantly unhappy in your life, look in the mirror. Because you are the source of your own pain. You are the source of your own suffering and frustration. And all of the things. And I think, was it Socrates that said, I can't remember which philosopher said, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. That is so absolutely correct. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. So how do we find the good fit therapist? For those of us that are ready, for those of us that got the growth mindset, for those of us that want to get in there and do that fucking work, let's do this. Yes, it's me. And I know I can fix me, but I need some help because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, right? I'm not, even the best therapist can't be their own therapist. And that brings me to one of the pointers from episode 4. Find a therapist who has a therapist. Find a therapist who's doing their work. And even if they've done a shit ton of work, even if they've done so much work on themselves, that job, being a therapist, is emotionally draining. It's incredibly difficult. It is full of trauma and compartmentalization. Any great therapist will have their own support system via another therapist. So I have strong doubts about any quote unquote qualified therapist that doesn't have their own therapist. And I've seen it play out. Like, I tried a therapist a couple months ago, and the only red flag I saw in the interview, so to speak, was, nope, don't have a therapist. Nope, I'm fine. And I'm like, oh, are you? Yeah, no. You gotta have your own support system, especially in that job, and like set the example. Like, what do you expect for your clients when you're not taking care of yourself? What, what does that show them, that you don't actually prioritize mental health, that this is lip service? Like, I mean, there's a variety of reasons for your therapist to have a therapist, but I think that's kind of crucial. Some people don't. I do. Okay, so let's talk about another example of what a good therapist challenging you could look like. So one of my friends is going through this, and her partner has a therapist that's maybe a yes person, maybe not the right fit, or maybe just is meeting him where he's at because he's not ready to do the work and he's not being accountable and he's not interested in growth and doesn't have a growth mindset. So he's kind of in therapy because of his wife, or in therapy because of X, Y, or Z, whatever. Like, I don't know, and I don't need to know. But the example is like, hey, when you're asked, why do you want to switch from 50 years of monogamy to non-monogamy? And the answer is, I don't know. A good therapist should challenge that and say, well, let's think about that, and let's look in the mirror, and let's, metaphorically look in the mirror and take accountability for our behavior and say, what is it about me? What's driving my desire? What is driving me? And if like all your relationships are ending up the same, or if your patterns are the same, or if you're dating the same person, or you're married to somebody who's not healthy, what about me is attracting this person? What about me can I work on to not be complicit or complacent with relationships that are not healthy for me? What about me is wounded or needs healing or needs recovery or work or processing or whatever the case may be, that drives me to unhealthy relationships or mismatched relationships, or to be with somebody who doesn't want to be with me physically, that sort of thing. Like, these are all examples I have from other people's personal lives. And they all combine to make the same point I'm trying to make, which is, finding a good therapist is going to be very personal to you and what you're looking for and where you're at. And you need a therapist that can challenge you and start to slowly, and I use the word slowly, gently here, slowly, gently push you. You want someone that will slowly, gently push you. Now, if you're like, Missy, you don't know what you're talking about. I got this. I've been in therapy for years. Okay, then maybe you need a therapist that will call you out on your shit and do so blatantly and push you a lot fucking harder. Absolutely. It's wherever you're at in your therapeutic journey. This is really more pointed to listeners who are trying to find a new therapist, or are new to therapy, or not too far down the rabbit hole of their therapeutic journey, which I've gotten the most requests for. So what does that look like? It looks like figuring out first, are you ready for fucking therapy? Are you even ready? Do you want to be there? Question number 1. Are you ready? Do you want to be there? Same question. Question number 2. Does your therapist have a therapist? Are they getting support? Do they have the support they need? Question number 3. Are you familiar with IFS? Because when you get further down, and you can outgrow your therapist too, but when you get further into the deeper work, IFS, I think, pretty critical. Maybe not trained in IFS, but at least you got to be damn familiar with IFS. Question number 4. Are you familiar with DBT, CBT? Tell me about your trauma training. Like, tell me about your background in trauma training in general. Like, DBT and CBT are great, but say more about your trauma training experience. Like, do you know who Dick Schwartz is? Do you know who Peter Levine is? Do you know, the body keeps the score, Bessel van der Kolk? Tell me about your experience in trauma training. And that's where the body keeps the score comes in, and no bad parts. And I can't remember the name of the Peter Levine book. And then there's also Complex PTSD by Pete Walker. That book is a gold mine. And it's good for every level, I think. I don't know. You tell me. You tell me if you read it and you're like, whoa, that's too much. I just started therapy and this is way, way, way too much. Okay, let me know. Let me know your thoughts on it. But let's make sure you have somebody who's got a background in trauma training, who's experienced in it, who has inner child work, healing training, and or is experienced in it. What was that, number 5 or 6? I lost track. That's bullet point 5 or 6. There you go. So, and spend some time. Like, it's going to take a few sessions. I had 6 sessions with this therapist that my insurance covered relatively recently until I discovered on the 6th session she was not a good fit. 6 sessions. Maybe it was 7. 6 or 7 sessions where I was like, oh, this is not and I knew she wasn't doing the work on herself, so that was the biggest red flag I had. And she's like, yeah, I've been to some therapy, but I'm fine now. And I'm like, right. Because if you think that about you, then why would you not think that about me? Like, oh, you're all healed and shit. Oh, you're fine now. And it wasn't a deal breaker until she gave me a bad piece of advice. And another good tip for another good therapist, tip number 7, let's say, because I've lost track of how many I said, is they shouldn't give you advice, meaning they shouldn't tell you what to do. They should guide you to find the right answer through your morals, ethos, and ethics, through your values. Guide you to be living into your values, not their own, because everybody else has their own personal ethical system and their personal values. So your therapist should not be telling you what to do. A good fit therapist and or a good therapist doesn't tell you what to do, but they may guide you. Like, hey, have you thought about this? And have you thought about this? And what do you think of this? Even though they know, like, hey, this is the right answer for this person, and I totally know what to tell them to do because they're the professional at their job, right? Like, my therapist has the answer a lot of the time, but she doesn't straight up tell me, hey, Missy, you needed to go do this. She's like, well, what do you think about this? And I'm like, oh, you're right. And I'll have, and somebody that can bring you those higher level concepts and check your behavior and help you see in a gentle manner, hopefully, that there's behavior that you can change. There's thought patterns that you can change. And a therapist should know that a lot of our automatic negative thoughts or negative thoughts in general, our anxious thoughts, are lying to us. So there's a handful of criteria, and ultimately it's going to be the best fit for you. But I think criteria number 1 is the most important. Do you want to be there? Do you want to be there? If the answer to that is no, then baby, you ain't ready. And that's okay. Like, let me reiterate, that is okay. It's okay to be where you're at. It's okay to not be ready for a growth mindset. It's okay to not be ready for therapy. It's okay to not be ready to look in the mirror and start doing the work. It's okay to be service level. It's okay if that's all you can muster. Maybe just be clear about that with who you are if you're out in the dating pool or in personal relationships or with your marriage or with your partners or whomever. Just be clear about who you are and what capacity you have. Okay. All right. I've droned on long enough. If you guys have more questions about how to find a good fit therapist or what that looks like, how to interview the therapist, whatnot, let me know and I'll be happy to answer. You know all the socials by now. I know I say them almost every episode, but follow me at missy.traveler on TikTok, Missy the Traveler on Instagram, You Make It Happen podcast at Gmail. Oh, and I will add this new caveat. I get all those requests in email and they're all AI generated. And I'm like, absolutely not. I am not. And they're not all of them, obviously, but a lot of the requests for like, so-and-so should go on your show and so-and-so should be this. And if you send me something through AI, I'm not going to respond to you. I'm absolutely not going to respond because it even has code phrases. Just say apples and then we'll know that you want to pass. And I'm like, it's a fucking AI generated message in the first place. Like, if you are a human being and you want to be on the show, then you want to solicit your appearance on the show, then message me like a human being. Don't send an AI message. I know that that's much easier and I get it. And it's just how it's done now, but it's not how I do things. So the show is very personable. It's very vulnerable. It's very open. And I like real human beings that show up with their personal stories, not somebody who's plugging what they want to sell on the internet and what they want to sell through a podcast and how they want to sell themselves. It's not what I'm here for. So I understand and I appreciate the feedback and I appreciate the solicitations, but talk to me like a human being and you stand a much better chance. Okay, so I have to be honest, this podcast does take a lot of my energy, which I've mentioned before, and it just takes more emotional energy than I have right now. The podcast is going to be on a little hiatus, and I would love to tell you for how long. I'm thinking 3 to 6 months, but message me if you want it to be shorter, and I'll see what I can do. But I need a break. The podcast is going to be on a little bit of hiatus after this episode. Thank you for being dedicated fans and listeners. I appreciate y'all, and I'll be back as soon as I can, as soon as I have the bandwidth for it. So, as always, you guys know it. Work your shit out, not on other people. We'll see you next time.